There's something happening right now across an entire generation that doesn't make logical sense when you look at the numbers. 41% of millennials say they feel broke. Not just broke in the moment, but broke in a way that sits inside them constantly. Meanwhile, only 14% of people over 59 feel the same way. That's a 3-to-1 difference. And here's where it gets stranger. 82% of the millennials who feel broke say they feel behind on retirement, no matter what their actual bank balance says. This isn't about being poor. This is about a gap between what you actually have and what your brain tells you that you have. Let's start with what the data looks like on the surface. Millennials have been hit with a different economic reality than previous generations, and that's just fact. The median boomer had accumulated $270,800 by retirement age. The median millennial right now has $83,700 saved. That's a gap of nearly $200,000. It's real. It's structural. But here's the thing that keeps coming up in conversation after conversation. A lot of people earning over $100,000 a year still feel behind. 49% of them actually. They're making six figures. They have more money than most people they grew up with will ever see. And they're lying awake at night thinking about whether they're going to be okay. So this isn't just about how much you earn. This is about something deeper. This is about how your brain learned to think about money in the first place, and why that thought pattern doesn't change just because your bank account does. Let's back up and talk about what actually changed for millennials structurally. First-time homebuyers used to be the majority of the market. Now they're 21%. 21%. That means 79% of home sales are people who already own property, already have equity, already have that foundation. The median age of a first-time homebuyer used to be 32. It's now 40. You're waiting 8 years longer to buy a home than your parents did. 8 years of rent. 8 years of not building equity. 8 years of watching your paycheck go somewhere that isn't creating wealth for you. Wage growth didn't keep up. That's the simple version. From 1980 to 2020, the cost of living in major cities went up. Rent went up faster. Healthcare went up faster. Education went up faster. But wages grew, sure, but not at the same rate. So even if you're making more money than your parents did in nominal dollars, you're actually buying less. Your money goes less far. The purchasing power is lower. You're running on a treadmill that's moving faster than your legs can carry you. But here's what's interesting, and this is where the psychology comes in. A lot of people who finally do get a raise, or who finally save up a decent amount, report that the feeling doesn't actually go away. You'd think it would. You'd think that when your bank account finally reflects security, your brain would feel secure. But that's not how it works. The feeling is more powerful than the number. This happens because your brain didn't learn to feel secure from seeing money in an account. Your brain learned to feel secure or insecure from watching what happened around you when you were young. If you grew up with parents who were stressed about money, who talked about money in a stressed way, who made decisions from a place of scarcity, even when things were okay, you internalized that. You learned that money is something to be anxious about. You learned that you should always be worried. You learned that the safe thing is to assume the worst. And that neural pathway doesn't get overwritten just because your circumstances change. Social media made this so much worse. Before the internet, you compared yourself to your neighbors, your friends, your family. You had a limited set of reference points. You knew roughly what people around you made. You knew what their houses looked like, what their cars looked like, what they spent on things. It was a relatively narrow band of comparison. Now you see the curated highlight reel of thousands of people every single day. You see the vacation photos. You see the new car posts. You see the restaurant dinners and the renovated kitchens. You don't see the debt. You don't see the anxiety. You don't see the credit card bills. You see the result. And your brain starts to believe that this is normal, that everyone else has figured something out that you haven't. Your brain then does something really interesting. It starts to redefine what broke means. If other people are doing this and you're not, then maybe you're the one who's behind. Maybe the goalposts have moved and nobody told you. So you're earning more than you ever have, but now you feel more broke than ever, because your idea of what's normal has shifted to something completely different. There's also something happening with financial anxiety that gets confused with discipline. A lot of people wear their money stress like a badge. There's an unspoken assumption that if you're not worried about money, you're not being careful. That if you're not constantly stressed, you're being irresponsible. So even when things are fine, you stay in a state of anxious hypervigilance. You check your account obsessively. You assume the worst-case scenario. You tell yourself that the moment you relax is the moment something goes wrong. And that constant state of alert feels like responsibility. It feels like you're taking it seriously. But it's actually just anxiety. It's not helping you. It's just exhausting you. Here's what also matters. Millennials grew up during a time when the economy shifted in front of us. A lot of us watched our parents struggle through the 90s and 2000s. We watched them lose jobs. We watched them stress about layoffs. We watched them downsize. We watched them figure out how to do more with less. And we learned something from that. We learned that you can't trust that things will be stable. We learned that you need to be ready for the bottom to drop out. We learned that the safe place is always preparing for disaster. So even now, when the disaster isn't happening, we're still preparing for it. We're still operating from a scarcity mindset, even when we actually have enough. We're still rationing. We're still assuming the worst. We're still living like it could all be taken away tomorrow, because that's what we learned. That's what we watched. That's what we internalized. The structural problems are real. The wage gap is real. The housing market is real. The cost of living is real. Those things are not in your head. They're not psychological. They happened, but the feeling of being broke at every income level, that part is psychological. That part is learned. And here's the good news about that. If it's learned, it can be unlearned. It can be changed. What actually changes the feeling is not earning more money. Study after study shows that people earning more still feel broke. What changes the feeling is having a system. It's having a clear, visible picture of where your money actually goes. It's knowing exactly what you have. It's knowing exactly what you spend. It's removing the guesswork. It's removing the constant background anxiety of not knowing. When you have a system, something shifts. You stop feeling like money is something mysterious that happens to you. You start feeling like money is something you're directing. You're choosing where it goes. You understand the trade-offs. You see the actual picture instead of the scary story your brain is telling you about the picture. And that's when the feeling changes. Not because you have more, but because you can actually see what you have. The other thing that changes it is honesty about your own life. Not comparing yourself to the edited version of someone else's life on the internet. Looking at what you actually have, what you actually need, what actually makes you feel secure. Those things are probably different for you than they are for someone else, and that's okay. Your definition of enough might be smaller than the definition you've been carrying around because you were looking at other people's numbers. This is the thing about being a millennial and having money anxiety right now. It's not a personal failure. You're not broken. You're not bad with money. You're responding to real structural changes and to the psychological imprint of watching those changes happen while you are forming your ideas about security. The feeling makes sense. The feeling is rational given what you learned and what you've experienced. But the feeling is also not necessarily the truth about your situation right now. So when you're lying awake at night worried about money, even though your bank account is fine, you're not crazy. You're not overthinking it. You're experiencing something that 41% of your generation is also experiencing. You learned something early about scarcity, and you're still running that program. But programs can be rewritten, systems can be built, pictures can be clarified. And when they are, the feeling starts to shift. Not because you're making more money, but because you finally understand what you actually have.